And this is like a real pleasure to meet up with Dawn Emerson and Judith Smith and Kelly. It's so you guys have just taken the pastel from tradition to we call it modernality, and you're doing innovative things, and it's great to watch your process. And I just finished Dawn's workshop that she offered online, and what a great event that was. But anyway, what I'd love to do is for each of you to take a moment and just briefly talk about your art journey. And so, Dawn, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I started pastels probably in the 90s, in the mid 90s, and fell in love with it. Felt like home because it was so much like drawing, and was fortunate enough to study with some Albert Handel and Harley Brown and others, and Doug Dawson, and learned a great deal. And then I was getting into shows and showing in the gallery and so forth, and it was wonderful. But I started off doing sumi ink underpaintings that were just very broad strokes, and adding the pastel on top of that. Later, in 2008, a woman came to our town and opened up a printmaking studio, and it was absolutely amazing to me to be introduced to monotype and different forms of printmaking. And that was a game changer, and it opened my eyes to how people talked about drawing and art very, very differently as a printmaker. Process was much more important, and this idea of either etching and going down into the substrate, or adding and subtracting. And that led to a whole thing about how to think about drawing as both additive and subtractive. And at this point, years later, I have a couple presses in the studio, and I continue to do the monoprints and colograph, which is like a three-dimensional surface that's embossed, and adding pastel and whatever else I want to do to that. And just it has made me realize the incredible potential of the pure pigment in a stick that is pastel, and its versatility, but also this idea of powder versus a liquid medium, and how do you marry the two, and what can they do? So I go into the studio, and truly it's playing every day just to experiment and see what else can I do? What surface haven't I tried? I try not to think about the cost of framing something or whether it's going to need to be under glass at that point. Of course, we're all trying to find a way not to put it under glass, and I'd love to hear the other people's views of that process. But it has been so much fun to just play, and every day it has been a discovery. And that's why I paint, is really just to see what I can do, and I never know what the end product is going to be. That's okay with me, but it may not be okay for everybody. So that's me.
I love the fact that I think you called your studio your innovative laboratory.
Yeah. And it's also my playground.
Yeah, great. That's wonderful. Thank you, Dawn.
Sure.
Judith, tell us about your art journey through time, and how it's evolved for you.
Who are we on?
Judith.
Oh, me? I thought you said Kelly. I'm sorry. Okay, well, since I've been at it maybe longer than any of you, because I'm so old, I started in 1965 as a medical illustrator. I illustrated medical textbooks, built medical exhibits, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been with science and art for a long time. And leaving my job, this was in Montreal, leaving that, I got involved in an atelier doing etching and engraving. And so that began a 20-year time with printmaking of all kinds. That was my first love, and what I still really love printmaking. But I got sick from the solvent and had to move away from it. So now they have now they have water-based ink. So I could go back, but unfortunately I sold my big press. So I moved on to neon sculpture. And I did that for about 5 years. And then we realized that people weren't buying that because they're afraid it will electrocute the children. Or if you break it, where are we going to get it fixed? You know, all that kind of stuff. So I was searching around for something that gave me the excitement of neon. And I ran into a cowboy from El Paso named William Herring. And I took a pastel workshop with him. And pastel fit the bill. That's what I was looking for, because I could get that intense, fantastic color. And he mentored me for 2 years. I sent my slides to him in El Paso, and he did this for free. He was a terrific guy and a terrific teacher, in that he wasn't actually teaching me how to do something, but opening opportunities for me and avenues. I mean, he said to me, why aren't you exhibiting, you know, in shows across the country? And I said, I don't know how to do that. And then he showed me Pastel Journal, and he said, look back here and it'll tell you how to do that. And one thing led to another, and I started building my curriculum vitae, and I became very interested and involved in pastel for a long time, since the early 90s. And I kind of felt that I had pushed it as far as I could with regular pastel painting. And I'm always looking for something new. And as I said, I like a mix of science and art. So from the pastel, I started then into encaustic, which meant I was scraping my pastels into powder, mixing them with beeswax. And I spent a number of years doing encaustic. I still do that, and I love it. But then I thought there must be something else. And the something else came with the increased rates of FedEx shipping paintings around the country under glass. And I thought, why can't we use pastel? Well, it started with, why can't pastel artists be involved in public art? Because I saw all these opportunities in my own community and in Seattle and around for public art. And I thought, I don't see any pastel artists doing any of this. And of course, it's because we're constricted to frames and glass and, you know, all the usual. So I thought, okay, there was a competition at our local community, not the community center. It was the building of our new city hall in Olympia and police station. And they sent out a call for artists within 30 miles of Olympia to bring in art. 4 of us made the final call, and I had submitted big canvases done in pastel. And they were crows, because that was sort of what I was known for around here. And there were crows and things in different positions. Anyway, they're big, and I had to make a way of sealing them. So I sprayed them, knowing that it was going to darken things. But when you're doing crows, it doesn't matter how dark it gets. This really went over big. I won the contest. My pieces are still down at City Hall. And I got excited. I said, well, why can't I do something else with canvas? Because this is terrific. I don't have to do any glass. I don't have to worry about shipping them. They're lightweight. And that started the whole business of how can you seal it? And I'm still working on that. It's still a work in progress, but I just finished a Zoom video for the NPS, for Northwest Pastel Society, in which I showed the different things that I use to seal the canvas. And I got a really great response from people. I don't know, as Dawn says, what you're doing is not for everybody, but it's nice to be able to share that, and maybe somebody will get some use from it. So that's where I am now. I'm doing big canvases now. They're about 80% to 90% pastel. And then of course they're sealed in various layers, and I rework them, get them pretty deep. That's it.
That's great, Judith. You know, keep on keeping on.
Whatever time I have left, I intend to keep going.
Yeah, there you go. Kelly, tell us about your process. And I know that you do a lot of pastels with encaustic, and so that's such a fun medium. And
Both of them.
Tell us your journey.
Sure. I started, I always had art in my life ever since I was a little kid. I graduated from university with a degree in sculpture, so 3D. You come out of university and it's hard to hold on to a 3D studio. And so I did a lot of watercolor. I went to flat media, whatever it was. I just kept working in that. I also had a full-time career in music for about 30 years. And so in that 3-decade period of time, I built studios, I had a personal practice, but I wasn't necessarily doing that full time. In 2002, Pastel and I met each other, and Caustic and I had not met each other. That was years later. And I was able to study with Richard McKinley many times, Albert, of course, Dawn. I'm an experience education geek. I firmly believe that as advanced or whatever, however far up we are on the ladder, we always have something to learn. And it's not ever failed me. So in addition to teaching, I like to go and be taught. So 2002 comes along, I'm pasteling. That happens for a whole long time. A friend insists I must use encaustic because of my sculpture background. And I finally agreed several years later to go check out this encaustic thing. And there we go. I'm like, oh my gosh, you just ruined me and my budget. And so the encaustic practice began. And for me, being a dimensional person at heart, and when I'm painting with dimension in my head and layers and how you juxtapose things. It really was quite satisfying and continues to be. And I call encaustic the great unifier. It works with any medium except acrylic, which is a polymer. So the ability to experiment and I have a lab too, and Dawn's been to my lab. It's called the Mulakis Art Lab and Emporium. And I work in about 5 or 6 different kind of mediums, and I teach in all mediums. And so I'm trying to think of what else I should stick in there. I began working with scientists in 2010 in the regenerative medicine field, interpreting visually their science. So that carried me along again in this very experimental, how do you translate science with art materials? And I think that's where we are.
That's fantastic. So what I'd like for each of you to talk about now is, we briefly describe some of the, the innovative ways you create and then expand on how you preserve your pastel works. Let's go back to Dawn and.
Right. Well, there have been so many incredible surfaces that have come up, in the past 30 years, everything from the multimedia art to painting on wood, which isn't new, but the wax mediums, cold wax medium, all of this stuff. And I just want to try all of it. So again, with the idea of scraping down, Kelly, I love that you were a sculptor, and Judith, that you did neon. It's just how those things influence. First, you learn and you master, although we never master, because the more you know, you don't know, the beginner's mind thing every day. But you get the medium under control. And then you're looking for other things. And so whether it's a new surface, or if you're influenced by dimensionality and sculpture, or wanting to be more physical with the process of painting itself, or, getting into it, that's what drives me, I think. I love to scrape in and carve away. And so I look for surfaces like clayboard, which I adore, that you can add and subtract and then create, dimensionality on the surface of that. You can attach things, and just trying to think of one thing and then think of the opposite. And then you put those together and your mind kind of explodes, and then you just make a huge mess and spend a fortune on new things. And then you come up with something at the end. Preserving it, that's always the issue. There is usually a way to preserve everything except for dust, which is what we have with pastel. And I have tried and tried to put wax on top of stuff, and it blends. So as soon as you infiltrate the dust, it becomes another substance, which is part of the beauty of it and part of the frustration of it. So I think in a nutshell, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dawn. Judith, how about you?
Well, it's true. It becomes something else once you put something into it. But I tried to explain that to people. I don't teach. I've tried that in the past, and it was too draining for me. I don't have very good boundaries, and I put myself too far into it, and I couldn't do it. It was just too much. So I do mentor younger artists. I have 3 people right now I'm mentoring, and one of the big questions they have is, how do we get around the glass? And I tell them, well, if you're going to be a pure pastelist, you probably will never get around the glass, because the pastel, the tiny specks of pastel are facetted, and that's why they catch the light, and that's why pastels have this wonderful glow about them, seem to be glowing from within. And that quality you do lose when you put water with it, alcohol, or whatever you want to mix with it. I started using water with it just because I wanted to move it around a little more. My strength has always been in drawing, and so that's why pastel seemed a natural thing for me to do. But I grew frustrated with that. I wanted to move it, so I started splashing with water, and then other things came, and pretty soon it was mixed media. I got very interested in collage this past year and making a rough surface or a textured surface to put the pastel on, and getting all these crazy new wonderful looks by putting pastel over sealed substrates that are covered with either a medium or with collage pieces. And so then I had to find something to fix it to the canvas. As I said, I started using canvas, lighter to carry, easier to ship, and fun to work on. So I experiment with a number of different sprays, trying to seal it, and ended up with using a mixture of, well, I've got them right here. Let me hold them up just a minute. I use a mixture of this Chelsea classical stuff called Lavender Damar Varnish, or Damar Varnish, and White Spirit. 2 parts varnish, 1 part white spirit. And I put them in this spray container that I found online. It's something that regular house painters use. And this spray is very, very fine. It's something that the house painters use when they are fixing up little marks that have been made on their nice door jambs after the people delivering the washing machine and so forth have bumped into them and ruined the paint. So they have to go back in and fix all of that. And they use this little spray also right here. This little spray bottle. And Preval, it's on the web, and I found it almost by accident. But anyway, it's a terrific fine spray. And I use that sometimes between layers of pastel. In other words, sealing one layer of pastel so that it does really look like paint, and then using another pastel to go over top and get that kind of lacy, I don't know how to show, I have to show you a piece to tell you how to do it, but it's worked for me. It gives a very layered look to some of my work, but it's definitely become mixed media. There's no way I could enter it into a competition, a pastel competition. I think even putting water on your pastel removes it from being an 80% pastel. I don't think you can put it into a pastel competition. I'm not sure, but I don't think you can.
You can.
You can? If it has water?
It's the top layer that has to be 80% pastel for most societies.
Okay. I haven't competed so long.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I know that golden spray varnish, the satin, works beautifully on pastel, and with a lot, gentle layers, gold, it works very, very well, and almost seals it. I won't say perfectly, but there's always, you can't, but would that, so Kelly, with your knowledge, does that qualify as being acceptable into a show or not?
Sealing it,
If you spray it with a varnish.
yeah, you're sealing it. You haven't on that last layer. This is my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected. The last layer of paint must be pastel, an 80% pastel.
The
So you
last
can have
layer,
a,
yeah.
you can have a
okay.
party going on underneath there. Um, and then that happens. And if the sealing it doesn't count as paint.
Ah, that's interesting to
Yeah, so in essence, what Judith is doing, then
Yeah.
I mean, it really could be entered because even though she's just moving the pastel around with water, and then she's just sealing it.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the what is it, the Latour fixative, and it has a resin in it, so it isn't. I don't know the components of what other fixatives have, but it seems like it should be.
should
So
be
if you-
okay.
Again, I'm always open for correction, but there are artists that completely seal their painting with a fixative before they glaze it with glass.
Mhm.
So it's the same.
Ah.
You're just choosing not to glaze it. And if that's a criteria for the show that it must be glazed, and there's a different situation.
Right.
Yeah. I should mention that I use one final coat of cold wax. I didn't mention that. I picked that up from watching a fellow in Great Britain who's does completely abstract work. And one of his final coats, he does a lot of acrylic painting, and then he puts this coat on of cold wax at the end. And I thought, I'm going to try that too. So my paintings are shiny by the time you varnish it with these particular things I've just mentioned, they have a shine to them. They're a little too shiny for me. And so I've taken to using cold wax and rubbing them down with cold wax afterwards. And that kind of gives you that deep look that an oil painting has, that kind of soft finish.
Judith, what was the name of that sprayer that you
Pastel, Preval.
Okay.
And you just look it up online. It's there. It's just an interesting thing. I came across it by accident, actually, but it works for me. I hold the canvas at probably about a 45-degree angle, and then spray this at a 45-degree angle. And I always have a piece beside that I test out first. I haven't, piece with pastel on it, so that I don't end up with any splatches or, it's a fairly even coat. And I do a light coat, and then perhaps I'll come back with more pastel to change things and come back with another coat. And all of this on top of collage as well. I would love to try entering this in a competition and see what happens.
I think the question would be, and it's going to be with me, I think it'll be wonderful to be at IAPS and have these conversations with people live this next month. Is cold wax would be considered very similar to encaustic. So it's another medium. And for IAPS, I'm certainly going to finish any painting that I do with the last layer of pastel by agreement. And I totally understand why, but then how will they feel about pastel being suspended in encaustic wax and things? So I think, Judith, you should pursue it though and ask questions, and we'll sure know a lot more after IAPS this year.
Yeah.
Well, one of the people I mentor is going to IAPS, so I'll give her a list of questions to ask while she's there.
Well, and that brings up the question about when you paint, you would want to enter the shows that are pastel societies, keeping in mind their rules. And it's like they're the strong center, the purists, and we're on the fringe incorporating the pastels with whatever we do and with other mediums. So I think it's really exciting that the fringe sort of is working all the time, like little busy bees, and then they, just kind of sting the middle a little bit. And whether it's the monotype underneath or whatever, all of these things that used to be forbidden and makes the center have to come and grow and think about what is acceptable and what isn't. So I don't enter that. This was one of your earlier questions, I think. You know, is Bonnie, you were asking, do you enter shows or do you not enter shows? And sometimes just so busy not paying attention to the rules of the societies that I wouldn't be entering the Pastel Society's shows. But the galleries don't care. In the end, it is what sells for the galleries and what you want to do as an artist. And so when I'm teaching, I'm just trying to loosen people out to the possibilities that the medium is capable of. And otherwise they will, I'm try to mention all the time that this may not, you know, cut the mustard with the pastel societies, but if you're growing, that's the important thing.
Right, right. That's a very good point, Dawn. And I think, you know, maybe there'll be some competitions that will be centered on innovations with pastel and using it as, you know, a sort of a mixed media as a competition within the pastel societies. It's just
there is one, you know, about the Central Mass Pastel Societies.
Right.
Central Massachusetts Pastel, CMP. Yeah, they started one 2 years ago. So get on their list. And they're inviting experimentation and alternative media. They have criteria, there's certain criteria, but it is definitely, their middle has been stung and they're responding positively.
So I think, Kelly, you didn't get to answer the question. I know you had some input. Do you have anything more that you'd like to add to, the innovative ways you use and create and then preserve your pastel works?
Yeah, I'll do a little talk, and if we get lucky enough to pull up that 1 minute and 11-second video, that'd be amazing, because it puts to visuals what I'm talking about with hot wax medium. For those of you that might not be familiar with encaustic, it is a medium that must be used at 200 degrees. The same pigments that are used to make all of our paint, pastel paint, acrylic paint, oil, watercolor, make encaustic hot paint as well. Ours is bound by beeswax and tree sap resin, Damar resin, as a matter of fact. So it's interesting to hear, Judith, that you use the word Damar in your product listing. And so, as we've all been talking about, when we put a wet media with a dry media, it becomes something different. And certainly when you're brushing on a wet media versus spraying it, it's even more complicated. So how do you lock in anything you've done on the bottom, like a pastel underpainting, whatever you've put under there, but let's use pastel because that's where we are today. Locking that in before you can brush on a traditional encaustic medium clear coat. And so I've been using some of your methods, Judith, and I'll try some of your chemistry. I'll get some of those notes from you to lock down as if we're fixing a pastel, right? You know, we're going to lock it down so that not so much is coming off, so that I can then come in with this beautiful opulent layers of clear wax and build up this ability to have optics on the pastel. And then once that's done and locked and it's safe, I can then begin painting all kinds of layers of more pastel and locking it down into the wax. And so the world is your oyster. And one of the questions, Bonnie, that you had identified for us was, how do you determine the final layer of your painting, was one of your questions. And I would say that the only time I would consider that is if I'm actually considering, submitting it to a show. But otherwise, the final layer of my painting is based on what the painting needs, or my happy factor. And otherwise, if it's something to be submitted, I follow those restrictions. I hope that answers that question.
I have that video available whenever you want to look at it, Bonnie.
Okay. Kelly, let's look at it right now. How about
Let's
that?
do it before
right.
it doesn't work.
All right, let me see if I can pull that up for you here.
Before it doesn't work.
Wait. Are you able to see this?
Yay.
Yeah, there's some other stuff on the side, but hopefully you can see the video.
Here is a 1-minute video combining hot wax paint medium with pastel. This is a mid-process video. Some of the sections are speedy, and some of them we're going to come into slow real time to give you an idea of the pace. And here we are. This is real time fusing the wax layers over the fully rendered pastel underpainting, locking down that underpainting with multiple layers of clear encaustic wax medium before I begin to paint the next subsequent layers with encaustic hot wax paint, pastels, carving, fusing, mark making, etc. Here, another of the many mid-step processes. I've got about 3 or 4 layers of encaustic, and I'm cleaning up the edges before I proceed.
Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, awesome. Let me.
Little plug for iApps in there that, you know,
Yeah.
you can still register and go.
We allow that.
Somebody on
that's
the
fine.
on chat asked about
let me.
whether or not you guys, any of you guys use the SpectraFix products as a final coat or in between layers. Dawn, do you use SpectraFix and in any of theirs, their Degas or their Final Fix, or there's something they call glass, I think.
I do not.
Judith, have you used any of the SpectraFix?
No, I haven't. I have not.
How about you, Kelly?
So I've been experimenting, like all 3 of us, we've got our laboratories in our art studios. And, you know, I tried it when it first came out and found it to be a tricky fixative to use. And because of the casein in it, you know, like what's the shelf life of it and how clogged up does the sprayer get? There was a lot of that happened pretty easily with the products, and then they came out with this new kind of glass, and I tried that, and it's almost like if you have the budget to keep buying it new, when the sprayer isn't clogged up, and I've even undone it and undone the clog, it's just it's not accomplishing what I'm looking for, and I suspect what Dawn and Judith are looking for is really to lock down our work and be able to be flexible with it.
Yeah. So with you know, one of the questions that people posed was how are you guys shipping like large works? Your recommendations for shipping large works, and they didn't define works, but I'm assuming, you know, something maybe 24 inches and above.
Carefully. Sometimes I'll spend hours packing something up just to make sure that it's really taken care of and nothing is going to stick to it or anything else. And I have shipped fairly good sized pieces with glass. And, you know, the glass skin is pretty helpful, except when you peel it off, you're going to be creating a lot of friction, static electricity that will tend to pull the pastel off the back. And that's another reason that I personally haven't entered a lot of shows, is because you just have no control over the shipping process unless you hand deliver something. And so if that's a possibility, then I'd prefer to do it that way, or ship it unframed and then have the final place be the person responsible for handling the framing of it.
So if you're shipping something unframed, are you building some sort of crate that allows, you know, nothing to touch the surface of the painting?
I'm not building a crate, but the the way that I prefer to do the shipping is either with one of the expensive, float boxes, or with padding on top, or to put a box inside of a box.
Mhm.
And that typically does work pretty well.
Judith, how about you with if you're shipping something for?
I don't ship to competitions anymore. FedEx was making me a poor person. And so I only ship to clients who have bought a piece. And in that case, it often is framed if it's a straight pastel. And I use those boxes, the strong box, it has the foam in it and everything. And I often will use the sticky stuff that you put on the glass so that if it does break, it doesn't damage the painting. But I've only had one experience in all the years I've been doing this where the glass broke and the painting was damaged slightly. Otherwise, I guess I've just been really lucky. But those boxes, the strong box that comes from Mississippi, Tupelo, Mississippi, I use those and they've been fine. But now I don't do that much anymore. I'm doing it on canvas, so I don't run into that.
And they're wonderful, but they're very expensive too, especially in the larger sizes.
They are, and I've been lucky to use them a couple of times.
Yeah, you can.
I will get them sent back to me and use them again. There'll be more duct tape on the outside, but they still work. They're pretty good boxes.
Those are great. Kelly, how about you? How are you shipping?
So if it's anything of size, I am putting TrueView Museum acrylic in it versus glass. That lightens the load for the shipping and also for anybody hanging it on their wall eventually. And then we're not really worried about breakage and, creating the masking problem with that, the tape that we're protecting our glass with. I do use the air float shipping boxes. Again, they can be used multiple times. They have all that pick and pluck, so you can, the foam, so you can lock things in there. I pay the return of the box for the client. So if I've sold a painting, shipping the box back to me is less than buying another box by a lot. And so that way I'm assured that they're going to go drop it off. And I have shipped tremendously huge artwork cross country. And when I do that, I hire a national company called US Art, and they come and they pack it for you. They crate it for you. They put it in their truck by hand. It goes to the next truck by hand, and it goes to the person by hand. Obviously, that's very expensive, and I would not be paying for that. So, it was a big project, and they are fabulous if you ever have something that you have to ship. But acrylic really helps.
And that acrylic it's a static free. Isn't it called Optium? Optium.
So
And it's static free.
TrueView makes the museum glass that's non-glare, anti-reflective, all those good things. Also makes the same in acrylic. So it's non-glare, non-reflective, anti-static, very expensive. And I don't participate in very many competitions as well, very similarly to Dawn and Judith, for all the same reasons. And then just personal time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time to do those.
It is.
IAPs I've been participating in but
there was a question for Judith. They're asking, does the top layer of wax, does it remain soft or does it harden? I think they're referring to the cold wax, Judith.
Yeah, the cold wax does have a slight softness to it, but after a month or so, it's pretty stiff. It is. And I really buff it a lot, so it's thin. I'm pushing it into the acrylic or whatever I've got underneath there in the pastel. It's not mushy at all. I mean, it does get to a certain hardness.
So I think at this point, how about if you all share a couple of pieces of work that you've done? I think that would be great for the audience to see that. See your work. Dawn, do you want to start and screen share some of your?
I'll give it a whirl.
Okay.
Okay. let's see, these on the, you can see this, I think, hope. The one on the left is 30 by 30, and that is on multimedia artboard. It's acrylic underneath, and then pastel for all of the color. The bright red is allowing the luminosity of the acrylic to come through, and you know, the drawing ability of the charcoal as well as the pastel on top of that. So this doesn't qualify for a show because it's not 80% covered in pastel, and yet I want to use the colors from underneath to show through. The one on the right is an experiment with adding, again, this is on multimedia artboard, not the pastel board, but the artboard. And I've built up, I don't know how many failed paintings underneath this, and then just whitened the whole thing, and then just started using pan pastel and other materials. So it's collage, and it's a mixture of a lot of different things.
Dawn, I'm not seeing your second. I'm seeing the red horse, but I'm not seeing the,
Oh, okay.
yeah, the second.
Let's see what I can do here. Let me, ooh, how do I get back? Stop the share. I'll stop the share for a second, and then I'll go back in and find another one. Okay, let's do this one. Can you see? Oh, no.
There's one.
Yes, yes.
You can see that one now, the horse. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's the on top of many different layers of lots of things. The texture is quite thick, and I've carved through it and added even oil pastel, which I love, and oil stick, I think, is on there, and collage and pan pastel, and a little bit of stick pastel as well. So it's both more sculptural and so forth. Let's see. You probably can't see this one. I have to stop the share again. So sorry, so sorry. But you had asked just for two, so that might be enough.
We have time. Let's take a look at one more.
Okay. Where is it? Can you see this?
This is the white trees.
The white trees, yes, there it is. Okay, the white trees. So this is layered with oil underneath, unlike maybe how the others start. I generally start with oil, something that's sticky, and then add pastel on top of that. In this case, it's pan pastel and carve through. So I want that color from underneath again to show up when I'm carving or using stencils or whatever, to give me that sense of light coming from within. And yeah, so the first layer is very often not pastel at all. And then the top layer would be sometimes pastel to very to change something nuance wise in a color that is something else that's there, something sticky or not. So I think that gives you a fairly good idea of what I do. And very often I'll find that these small paintings, this one started off just a 12 by 12, can then become a much larger painting, but I have to reconfigure, okay, how do I do this now with maybe all wet media? And that is in and of itself one of the great joys of just allowing yourself to experiment, that you get a whole bank of new stuff that just have to figure out how to do it.
Thank you, Dawn. Judith, can you share some of your work now?
We'll try. It's been a long time since you first showed me how to do this.
That's okay.
Okay, so we want to go into email. And here we go. Okay, I'm gonna go through these. Let's show you this one.
Share your screen first, Judith.
Oh, share the screen first. Oh dear. Okay. How do I go back to do that? Let's do it.
There you are.
All right, now share content. Okay, I've hit that. Okay, and share screen. And then we're going to email. Now, can you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet. Then I probably shouldn't hit screen. Okay, so we'll go back to this. Share content. And instead go straight to the email. I think that's what I did the last time. Now, do you see it?
No.
Oh, darn it. Ah, maybe you won't be seeing my things. Go to photos, try that. Go to email. Now? No? Still not.
Somehow, Judith, your screen isn't shared yet.
Ah,
So once we see your screen and then we can see you digging around for whatever, then we know we're going to be able to see what you come up with. But right
okay.
now it's a lovely face.
Oh, okay. I'm pushing the green thing that says share content. Okay. And then uh-oh. That's not what I want. I want Dropbox. Are you there? You still
We're
there?
here.
Yep, you got us.
Okay, but I'm just, darn it, we did this before and it worked. Screen. Everything. That just does. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here.
It's on your website, those images, aren't they?
Yeah, they are on my website.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
beautiful website.
But unfortunately, we had it earlier and now I can't make it work, which is really dreadful. It's going back to Chrome. I don't want that. I want it to go to email and now it won't.
Okay.
I'm
How
afraid-
about, how about if I share my screen, I go to your website and then you just talk me through which ones you want to look at.
Okay, see if we can do that.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me know once okay, here we go. And okay,
All right. So we go into paintings. Go into paintings and go into recent work.
go into recent work. Okay.
Yeah, work.
Okay.
Okay. Now, some of the one we want to highlight is the one, well, the big bird first, the artifact. Can you make him by himself? Okay. This is just about 100% pastel. And it began, and it also has collage in it. And so what you're looking at is first, the whole dark background was done just by working with my hands and making dark pastel areas. And I'm sorry, there's some charcoal in it too, but I include that with pastel. The scary face up in the top is from a gel plate that I did using pastel and water and printing it. And then it's on tissue paper and then using it as a collage piece. The bird, the head is a collage piece from another painting that was charcoal and water and done like almost like a watercolor. And then the body of the bird has several things. You'll see those dots down at the bottom. Those are from a binder, notebook that has that spiral in it. And then everything is sealed once with my sealing mechanism. And then I go back in with the white pastel, which picks up all of the texture I have underneath from little bits of collage and medium. And then the feet are drawn on with pastel. So he is all, basically when it's finished, he's almost all pastel on the surface. And then I varnish it again. So I'm working with layers and it's fairly thick. And this is on canvas. This one's about 30 inches by 40 inches. And it's a canvas piece. And if we can go to the one beside it, we can flip now.
Judith, are you priming your canvases before you
Yes, gesso. The canvas is primed with gesso. And in this case, again, the background, the dark background is all pastel and charcoal mixed and moved all over the canvas wherever I'm feeling it. And then the next part was done, let's see, where the color was going on. And you see where I have the oranges and things, those have all been sprayed, but because I use them in several layers, like a spraying, and then I'll come back and put more orange on there because I want more heat, and spray it again. So there's several layers of finishing that I'm doing between my pastel layers. Then I come back with the white pastel and water to drip it. And the bird in the front is white pastel. And again, I'm getting these lovely kind of webby effects from using pastel over varnished areas. I mean, I'm sealing something so that the texture is there. And then when you put the pastel over that, as you know, you get this lovely web of color, this softness. And using all these layers, thinking in caustic, as I do sometimes, like Kelly does, I am getting a depth, a terrific depth on these canvases. And this again is a 30 by 40. And I might have one other one there that you might want to see. Let's move down and see what else I've got here. No, this one on the right, Divertimento, is again a totally pastel painting with some water to get those drips and then moving the canvas to get them going in another direction. The dark birds in the background at the top and at the very bottom where you see the black bird. This is all to give a feeling. I was caught up in the whole business about the war in Ukraine, and it's to give a feeling of these dark forces moving in the background. And the bird in the front is many pieces of collage from torn apart painting that I did in water media and tore it apart and re-sculptured it. Actually, it's a sculpture of collage on top. And then the little pieces of the antique music score that I put on there. And then the red, of course, is all pastel that's done underneath and then sprayed again. So they're multi layers and canvas. But I'm still a pastel artist. So
Judith, can I ask you, what do you use to adhere the pieces of paper to the surface?
I use PVA. Generally, you could use medium, but that gets pretty expensive. So I use PVA. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep, I do.
Stuff. If anybody doesn't know, this is a sizing that I have. I started using this with linen because I wanted a nice way to frame my encaustics, and I would make a mat out of foam core and then stretch linen material over it and glue it down with PVA, the sizing. So it's a cheaper way to put your collage on your canvas or any, works really well.
Beautiful, beautiful work. Kelly, how about, can we see some of your work now?
So Bonnie, did you get the ones I sent?
Yes.
Yeah, by any chance? I mean, I can try while you're looking too, because, you know, we'll see how these little iPads do for us.
Yeah, they're hard.
Are you able to see that?
I am
Not yet.
not able to see that.
Are you guys seeing my stuff or not?
No. Oh, wait. Bonnie's sharing.
Oh, good, because
Yeah.
I'm having the same difficulty that Judith was having.
Yeah.
In any order is fine. There was 3 that I sent. There they are. Okay, so that is ink, pastel, and encaustic. Often my pastel paintings, being that dimensional person, I'm almost always starting my pastel paintings with a watercolor or an ink underpainting so that there's dimension given to the pastel on top of that surface of colored underpainting. And you can pick it up. And you know, it's giving me that little wink to my sculpture background here. So I painted a lot of opaque encaustic color. And then where you see all of the matte hues, all those greens and olives and creams, that is all pastel up on the top surface. And we can go to the next one if you want.
That's the same one, isn't it?
One, yeah, must have got two for some reason. Encaustic is one of those paint mediums that you never truly see its dimensionality and opulence and luminance until you see them in person, because there is so much depth. This is just an experiment. This isn't actually anything I think I even have around, but it was taking a watercolor underpainting on pastel paper, sanded pastel paper. I think it was UArt 400. And then starting to put encaustic wax medium over it and carving into it to reveal certain sections of the tones, and then coming over on top with hard pastel, not the pan pastels, with actual hard pastels, and making very textural marks on top of the wax, and then letting that settle into the wax with some fusing.
So when you do the encaustic over the UArt, are
Yep.
you are you mounting that on a hard surface? Because I'm thinking, won't the wax would crack if you don't?
Yeah,
Somehow.
good point, Bonnie. Yes, absolutely. It's why encaustic and canvas don't like each other, because depending on the canvas, you can do canvas over a board, but then you're back to the same board issue. Encaustic wants a stable surface. Wax can't be bent or it'll crack. And so, yes, you're correct. What I do is I mount any paper that I'm using, and I'm using all kinds of paper. Doesn't matter if it's a sanded surface or not. And I mount it on gator board, not foam core, but gator board. And I have a glue machine here in my studio, just like when you take it, to be done at a frame shop, so that it's completely stable. Gator board has wood fiber in it, so it likes the heat. It doesn't throw off any gas, any toxins. I wouldn't necessarily mount it to something plastic, for example. I could mount it to metal and it would work, but it would be hot. So you have all those other factors.
So you mount it before you do your painting and encaustic work.
I might not mount it before I do a watercolor painting or any kind of pastel. And if I'm wanting to shift it over into being able to accept encaustic as part of the process, I would throw it in my magic machine. I call it my glue machine. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And I think there's one more, I believe.
And this is one that was accepted into the CMP Pastels Plus show last year. And you can see that it's on a white ampersand encaustic board. White ampersand encaustic board loves wet media. So if any of you are wet media workers underneath your pastel, oh my goodness, it's just stunning. And then I was able to paint encaustic, opaque, and transparent. And then on the top, you'll see all of that. You can kind of tell the matted difference, can't you, from the sheen to the matte? And that is the pastel. And then I can carve into it and pull up things that I know I buried underneath, and a lot like how Dawn works. She and I love to carve our surfaces.
The other thing that it brings up too about sculpture, I did a lot of stone carving when I was in school, and you can polish the surface and play around with the various gloss versus matte, or
Yes,
versus not, right? Which is something that we often don't think about with pastel, but it's definitely a possibility.
for sure.
All right. Beautiful, beautiful work, you guys. I'm thrilled to be able to show these back up here. So we're getting close to probably finishing up, but I do want to ask you, you know, what has been the impact, if any, on the marketability of your art by, you know, going to this next step and taking things to the edge, if you will, and you know, not working necessarily traditionally. Dawn.
I think it's broadened the market hugely. I mean, around here, Bend, Oregon is sort of a resort destination type of place, and people are building very large homes with lots of wall space, and they want large, and they don't want glass, you know, for the reflective reasons. And so pastel artists are forced to figure out ways to either learn a new medium or combine the pastel medium with other things that don't need glass. So I would say that, you know, between oil sticks and oil pastels, that there is, those feel so familiar in hand once you learn how to use them, just like a pastel. But it just takes time and willingness to explore. And that would be my answer.
Yeah, thank you. Judith, how about you?
I feel the same way. I have had a lot of luck selling my mixed media pieces on canvas, and so it expands things. People still buy the straight pastel as well. It depends on what they're looking for. I mean, the market is, it can go either way, but I have had quite a bit of luck with my mixed media canvases, especially the big pieces. As John said, people are looking for big pieces these days. It seems to be, big art seems to be in, and so I'm moving along.
Do you paint your canvas when it's already on the bars, or do you paint it flat and then do you like that bouncy surface?
Well, I have a couple of things. I do paint canvas flat, but then I don't stretch it. I just hang it. You pin it to the wall. It's really a raw kind of experience.
Yep.
I've sold a couple of those with big crows and ravens on them. Some people have liked those, and I said you just pin it to the wall, and they do that. But the things that I showed you in just now are framed, and they were just up in the Bainbridge Island Art Museum, and they were framed for that reason, and they were on already stretched canvas because I was working big, and I wanted them to be framed and hanging in the museum. So that's usually what I do, work on the framed stuff already stretched, I mean.
How about you, Kelly?
Oh, yeah, it absolutely has expanded. I mean, you know, we all know that for some buyers, glass is a barrier. For some galleries, glass is a barrier, right? And caustic is still really underknown, if you will. There's gallerists in big art communities that don't really know what encaustic is. But as long as you can speak the language that I have something that's big,
Right.
without glass, then they'll listen to you. I have a pretty good local following, and you know, they've known I'm crazy and I work in all different kinds of mediums the whole time, so nothing's really changed there. So it's really what I'm trying to find in terms of new market, and it does make a difference.
You know what I think is really great is that y'all are you know, it's okay to work in different mediums. You know, we don't have to be just an oil painter. We don't have to be just a pastelist. That we can really combine a lot of different things, and it's all marketable. You know, you don't have to be a closet pastelist if you're an oil painter.
Right.
Well, and one medium informs another one.
Yes.
You learn, right? And then you just broaden your vocabulary of tools and possibilities.
And so
Yeah.
let's I would just I like to always end the sessions with you know, tips and words of wisdom that you have for, you know, new artists, old artists, whoever that are, you know, looking, that are listening and wanting to do something different with their art, or, you know, just you know, keep learning, which I think is such an important thing. But just take a minute, Dawn, and just if you have a couple of tips. And
I would just say be present, and beginner's mind, have that idea every time you do anything. And don't throw away stuff too fast. And take at the beginning, if you're just learning, even if you're very advanced, take photographs of your work in the studio in process, then play it back so that you will be able to understand your process and the possible places that you could have stopped earlier.
How about you, Judith?
I think my advice would be to work some every day. Every day, put some time into your art. I think too many of us don't spend enough time painting. And I think if you don't, you'll regret it. I'm further toward the end of my career than most of you. And when I look back, I am so thankful that I have spent so much time on my art. And I have recorded everything. I have a huge file of all the paintings I've ever made. And I look at them often to see how I progressed, where I came from, and where I'm going, possibly where I'm going. And at the moment, I have contracted macular degeneration. So I know that my time might be limited for using my art. And so I'm doing it every day. And I recently saw a video with Wolf Kahn before he died. And he was being interviewed in his studio. And he said that he was having the same problem I'm having now with my eyes. And he told the interviewer that he felt it made him a better painter. I thought, okay, well, I'm trying to find that out myself. And I experiment every day, and I tell people to do it. Love your art. Don't let it be something you do. Let it be who you are.
That's very
Thank
nice.
you.
Nice.
Kelly, how about you?
Yeah, I'll chime in, echoing what they both said. And I think the most important thing that I finally, after many years and decades, caved to, thankfully, is that you do need to warm up when you go in the studio. So many of us we have limited time. If you have other jobs or family, and you would like, if I can get to the studio and just paint for an hour, it'll be okay. But if you can get to the studio and just warm up for 10 minutes and then paint for 50, those 50 minutes are going to be far greater than the 60 minutes you did without warming up. Coming into yourself, being present, dropping into your flow. You'll train yourself how to drop into yourself as an artist. And those 50 minutes will be more valuable than any other way of painting. That's what I'd say.
Great. Well, I think we need to probably wrap this up. It's about 2:15 my time. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time to talk about this and your innovative approaches to pastels and other mediums. And thank you so much. And I think that people like you, you're the pioneers. You're the ones that are out there breaking the way, and those of us that are, we're following along and we're setting up our own laboratories. I think that's maybe what we need to do is change the name of our studios to our laboratories.
Yes.
It's a place of work and learning and creating. So thank you so much, and have fun at IAPS for whoever's going. And again, thanks so much.
Thank you all too for sharing, because it's a great honor to be among you and to hear your stories and your processes. Thank you.
I second that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great rest of the weekend.
Bye.